I'm afraid Section 31 just killed Star Trek streaming movies. Star Trek Section 31 is the first Star Trek streaming movie, and given its critical and audience reception, it could also be the last. Directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi and written by Craig Sweeney, Star Trek Section 31 is Academy Award winner Michelle Yeoh's comeback as Emperor Philippa Georgiou. Yeoh's former Star Trek Discovery anti-heroine teams up with a new team of Section 31 operatives to stop a plot to destroy the United Federation of Planets. Section 31 was originally planned as a TV series spin-off of Star Trek Discovery. Michelle Yeoh had a recurring role on Star Trek Discovery, and Emperor Georgiou was written out of the show in Star Trek Discovery Season 3 to bridge into Section 31. Several factors, including the COVID-19 pandemic and Yeoh's Best Actress Oscar win for Everything Everywhere All at Once, made Paramount Plus pivot, turning Section 31 into a made-for-streaming movie. There were hopes Star Trek Section 31 would launch a new Star Trek on Paramount Plus movie franchise, but Section 31's woeful performance among critics and fans may have dashed them. Section 31's reception may kill Star Trek streaming movies. Star Trek Section 31 was not well received by critics or audiences. Star Trek Section 31 has a 23% rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes, although this has ticked up from the 18% low it garnered earlier in its premiere weekend. Section 31's Rotten Tomatoes score now ties the lowest Star Trek movie rotten score, belonging to Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. Reviews overall were not kind to Michelle Yeoh's Star Trek streaming movie. Perhaps even more damning is Star Trek Section 31's 17% Popcornmeter audience score, which is abysmally low and reflects the general online consensus of the film, especially among hardcore Star Trek fans. Even Star Trek V: The Final Frontier's 25% audience score skews higher than Star Trek Section 31. While Section 31 does have fans who appreciate its attempt to bring a Mission Impossible meets Guardians of the Galaxy vibe to the Star Trek universe, the overall consensus pans the first Star Trek streaming movie. In Star Trek Section 31's defense, it was the #2 movie streaming on Paramount Plus for the weekend of January 25th and 26th, right behind Gladiator 2. Michelle Yeoh's Star Trek movie is being watched and perhaps even appreciated beyond the online and critical reaction. Yet such a vitriolic response from both critics and the Star Trek fandom is not the welcome for Section 31 that Star Trek on Paramount Plus hoped for. A Star Trek Section 31 sequel now seems unlikely, but the real concern is the future of other Star Trek streaming movies. Can Star Trek Legacy happen after Section 31? As beloved as Michelle Yeoh is, Star Trek Section 31 was never the new Star Trek project hoped for by the trucker faithful. The number one desire for Star Trek fans is Star Trek Legacy, the proposed continuation of Star Trek Picard Season 3 about the USS Enterprise G, led by Captain 7 of 9 Jerry Ryan. Paramount Plus has not attempted to deliver on fans' hopes for Star Trek Legacy as a TV series, and Star Trek Section 31 could now make Star Trek Legacy even less likely. If Star Trek Legacy couldn't become an ongoing TV series, then a streaming movie would be welcomed as the next best thing. There was speculation and hope that if Star Trek Section 31 was a success, then it could mean Star Trek Legacy may become viable as a streaming movie. However, if Star Trek Section 31 becomes the death knell for Star Trek streaming movies, then the possibility of Star Trek Legacy dissipates. In Paramount Plus' defense, however, they have never indicated Star Trek Legacy would be a TV series or a streaming movie. I never thought I'd say it, but here we are. After all the warp core breaches, the time travel paradoxes, and the temporal Cold Wars, what finally did it was a black badge. Section 31, Starfleet's murky mirror, the cloak and dagger branch that lives in the shadows, has just leapt from the periphery of the Star Trek universe into center stage. Not in a sly subplot. Not in a morally ambiguous twist. No, this time they've got their own streaming movie. And I'm afraid that may have just killed Star Trek's cinematic future, at least on streaming. Let's back up. Star Trek has always had a rocky relationship with the big screen. From the grandeur of the Wrath of Khan to the uneven rhythm of the TNG films and the Kelvin timeline's explosion-fueled sprint, Trek cinema has had moments of brilliance and of bewilderment. But the streaming era promised a new frontier. Bite-sized storytelling with blockbuster-level production. Deep dives into characters, ideas, and themes without the pressure of a box office. It was supposed to be perfect for Star Trek's more thoughtful, philosophical bent. And for a moment, it was. Star Trek: Strange New Worlds brought hope. Picard Season 3 gave fans closure. Even Lower Decks found its niche with satirical love for the franchise. Trek was stretching, trying new things, figuring out how to work on TV again. Then came the long-rumored Section 31 movie, starring Michelle Yeoh as Emperor Philippa Georgiou, the Terran-turned-agent from the Mirror Universe. It had promise. Michelle Yeoh is a force of nature. Section 31 has always been a controversial, tantalizing aspect of the lore. A one-off movie sounded like a decent way to give fans a taste of Trek espionage without bogging down the other shows. But what we got wasn't an evolution of Trek, it was a deviation. A sleek, violent, morally gray thriller where the ideals of Starfleet were left gasping for air in a locked brig somewhere. Instead of boldly going, it boldly doubled down on action tropes and spy movie cliches. Instead of infinite diversity and infinite combinations, we got infinite conspiracies and infinite corridors. It looked good. It moved fast. But it didn't feel like Star Trek. Section 31, in theory, is an interesting narrative device. A foil. A provocation. A question: what happens when the protectors of Utopia do dirty work to keep it intact? When introduced in Deep Space Nine, it was chilling and compelling precisely because it existed in contrast to the Federation's bright ideals. It was never meant to be the protagonist. But here we are. The Black Badge is the star of the show. The problem isn't just tonal. It's philosophical. Star Trek, at its best, is aspirational. It challenges us to be better, to imagine a world beyond scarcity and prejudice. It wrestles with ethical dilemmas but still believes in the possibility of good. When Trek leans into darkness, as DS9 or Picard sometimes did, it still anchors that darkness in a foundation of hope. Section 31, when foregrounded, flips that. It centers secrecy, control, and moral relativism. And in a franchise that has always tried to push against dystopia, that's a dangerous pivot. Maybe Paramount saw the success of darker franchises and thought Trek needed more grit. Maybe the studio figured a spy thriller would pull in non-Trekkies. But in doing so, they may have broken something essential. Streaming Trek films should have been a chance to explore corners of the galaxy in contained, character-driven stories. Imagine a Dr. Crusher-led medical drama on a frontier colony. A courtroom thriller with a young Vulcan prosecutor. An archaeology adventure with Vash and a guest appearance by Q. Trek is rich with possibilities. Instead, we got a power fantasy wrapped in shadowy aesthetics. And it's already casting a long shadow on what comes next. What message does this send? That the only way to make Trek work is to make it not Trek? That the only future for Star Trek movies is to move away from the stars entirely? I worry that Section 31's shiny darkness may set the tone for future streaming movies. That execs will look at viewership numbers and say, more of this. More anti-heroes. More secrets. More morally bankrupt protagonists in Starfleet cosplay. And less of the wide-eyed curiosity, the deep ethical questions, and the characters who believe in something bigger than themselves. We didn't need a perfect Federation. We just needed a hopeful one. One that didn't hand the keys to the kingdom to its most cynical agents. This doesn't mean Trek is doomed. Not yet. There are still good stories being told, some even great. But if Section 31 becomes the template for future movies, then we've lost something vital. Something uniquely Star Trek. And that's why I'm afraid. Because while Section may 31st have been designed to protect the Federation from threats it couldn't understand, in trying to reinvent,